Have you ever wondered why the satisfaction you get from the world never lasts? You work hard to buy the car, and for a month it brings you joy. Then it becomes just a car. You chase a romantic partner, and in the beginning, the rush is intoxicating. But soon, the excitement fades into routine. We spend our entire lives itching. We feel an itch of desire, so we scratch it with a sensory experience, a meal, a touch, a purchase. The scratching feels pleasurable for a fleeting moment, but the act of scratching only inflames the skin, making the itch return with greater intensity. You are trapped in a biological cycle where you mistake the relief of pain for the presence of happiness. We assume that a life of maximum sensory indulgence is the definition of success. But what if this assumption is the very bars of your cage? What if the pleasure you feel is actually a symptom of a disease? In the Majjhima Nikaya, the Buddha delivers one of the most confronting teachings in the entire Pali Canon. He suggests that what we call pleasure is nothing more than a leper cauterizing his wounds over a fire. It feels good only because he is sick. This is the radical diagnosis of our addiction to the senses. To understand why we are trapped, we must look at the Buddha's uncompromising analysis of sensuality, or kama, in the Magandiya Sutta, MN 75. The Blessed One offers a simile that shatters our romanticized view of desire. He describes the human condition not as a healthy state, but as a state of illness. Says, "Now suppose that there was a leper with sores and blisters on his limbs, being devoured by worms, scratching the scabs off the openings of his wounds, with his nails cauterizing his body over a burning charcoal pit. The more he scratches the scabs off the openings of his wounds and cauterizes his body over the burning charcoal pit, the more foul and stinking the openings of his wounds become. And yet he would find a certain measure of satisfaction and enjoyment in the scratching of the openings of his wounds. So too Magandiya, beings who are not free from lust for sensual pleasures, who are devoured by the craving for sensual pleasures, burning with the fever for sensual pleasures, indulge in sensual pleasures. The more they indulge, the more their craving increases, and the more they are burned by the fever. And yet, they find a certain measure of satisfaction and enjoyment in dependence on the 5 chords of sensual pleasure. This is the Buddha's framework. The leper is the ordinary person. The sores are our cravings. The charcoal pit is the object of desire. When the leper holds his wounded limb over the fire, the heat provides a temporary relief from the itching of the infection. He calls this relief happiness. But in reality, the fire is damaging his skin further. If a doctor were to cure him, he would not want to go near the fire. In fact, if you dragged a healthy person to the fire, they would recoil in pain. The Buddha argues that enlightened beings do not abstain from worldly pleasures because they are repressing themselves. They abstain because they are healthy. To them, the pleasure of the world is like the burning charcoal pitat, stressful and unnecessary. We only enjoy the fire because we are sick with the disease of thirst. To illustrate this profound shift in perspective, we turn to the encounter between the Buddha and the wanderer Magandiya. This story vividly contrasts the view of the worldling with the view of the awakened one. At one time, the Blessed One was staying in the land of the Kurush. The wanderer Magandiya came to the place where the Buddha's grass mat was laid out. He was displeased. He said to the caretaker, "It is unfortunate that we see the bedding of that destroyer of growth." The recluse Gautama Magandiya called the Buddha a destroyer of growth because he believed the Buddha taught the denial of enjoyment. He thought the point of life was to consume. Later, the Buddha arrived. He knew Magandiya's thoughts. The Buddha asked him, "Magandiya, is it true that you said I am a destroyer of growth?" Magandiya, bold and arrogant, replied, "It is true, Master Gautama." The Buddha decided to show Magandiya the difference between low pleasure and high pleasure. He said, "Magandiya, formerly when I lived the home life, I enjoyed myself, provided with the 5 chords of sensual pleasure. I had 3 palaces and was entertained by female musicians. But on seeing the origin, the danger, and the escape in the case of sensual pleasures, I abandoned the thirst for sensual pleasures." The Buddha explained that he had tasted the very best the world had to offer. If sensory indulgence was the answer, he would have stayed there. But he realized that the happiness was fragile. The Buddha then gave Magandiya the simile of the leper. He asked, "What do you think, Magandiya? Suppose that leper was cured by a doctor, and then he saw another leper cauterizing his body over a charcoal pit. Would the cured man envy the leper? Magandiya replied, "No, Master Gautama, why not? Because when there is sickness, there is a need for medicine. When there is no sickness, there is no need." The Buddha continued, "So too, Magandiya, when I lived the home life, I was ignorant. I was like the leper. I thought the fire of the senses was happiness. But now that I am cured, I do not envy you. The delight you find in the senses is to me nothing but affliction, burning, and trouble." Then, to drive the point home, the Buddha gave a second powerful simile. The blind man in the white cloth. He said, "Suppose, Magandiya, there was a man born blind. He would hear people say how beautiful is a white cloth, spotless and clean. He would go searching for this cloth. Then a man would deceive him and give him a dirty, oil-stained, grimy rag, saying, 'Here is a white cloth.' The blind man would put it on and say with pride, 'I am wearing a white cloth, spotless and clean.'" The Buddha looked at Magandiya and said, "So too, Magandiya, the wanderers of other sects are blind. They do not know health. They do not know nibbana. Yet they speak this verse, 'Health is the greatest gain, nibbana, the greatest bliss.' But they do not know what health is. They take the dirty, oil-stained rag of the five aggregates and call it health. They take the fever of sensual desire and call it happiness." Magandiya was shaken. He realized he had been the blind man, wearing the dirty rag of his own ego and desires. He realized that what he called growth was just the swelling of an infection. He bowed down and said, "Magnificent Master Gautama. It is as if he were to light a lamp in the dark. Let me receive the going forth." Magandiya ordained and eventually became an arahant, curing his leprosy forever. How do we apply this radical teaching? We are not monks, but we are all lepers standing near the charcoal pit. The practice is not to forcefully repress your desires, which only makes the itch worse, but to see the danger clearly. The practice involves 3 concrete steps based on the Noble Eightfold Path. First, practice guarding the sense doors, the Buddha says. When seeing a form with the eye, do not grasp at its signs and features. When you see something attractive, a car, a person, do not let your mind create a fantasy around it. Catch the spark before it becomes a fire. When the eye contacts a form, simply note seeing, stop the scratching before it starts. Second, contemplate the danger adhanava. When you crave something, your mind only shows you the gratification. It shows you the delicious taste of the sugar, but not the disease. You must actively train your mind to see the hook inside the bait. Ask yourself, if I get this, will it last? Is this worth the anxiety? By seeing the danger, the craving naturally drops away. You don't touch the fire not because you aren't allowed to, but because you know it burns. Third, cultivate a higher pleasure. This is the happiness of a blameless conscience and meditation. You must give the mind a better food. When you meditate and feel the calm of the breath, cherish that peace. Realize that this peace is cool while the excitement of the world is hot. A warning must be given here. The Buddha warns in the Magandiya Sutta that the pursuit of sensual pleasures is the primary cause of conflict in the world. It is because of sensual pleasures that kings quarrel with kings and nations go to war. If you blindly chase your desires, you are contributing to the ocean of suffering. Karmically, a mind obsessed with heavy, coarse desire creates a heavy, coarse destiny. To conclude, the path to freedom lies in realizing that you are sick and that the medicine is not more of the poison. You have spent lifetimes scratching the wounds of your craving. The only cure is to heal the wound. As the Buddha declared to Magandiya, health is the greatest gain, nibbana the greatest bliss. This is not the bliss of excitement. It is the bliss of relief. It is the coolness of a fever breaking. Put down the burning coal. Step away from the pit, okay? Open your eyes and see the white cloth of true liberation.